Hey, what is going on, Guardians? TBL here, coming back at you guys with a video that I've been meaning to make for the past couple of days, but for whatever reason, for one reason or another, I've kind of been putting it off. Other things have been popping up, like, Division and Monster Hunter World, and I just decided to go play those things rather than talk about it. But last week, we of course got Destiny 2 Update 1.1.3, the one about Nightfall Strike scoring. And, of course, the big ticket item in that update was the Nightfall Strike scoring system being re-implemented into Destiny 2. We got Nightfall Strikes that have scoring modifiers now rather than a timer system to determine whether or not you succeed or fail in that strike. They changed up the way Prestige works. They added new modifiers to it, and they took some modifiers away from some things as well. And I kind of just wanted to give my thoughts overall on these Nightfall changes, what I like, what I dislike, and what I think could be improved upon in the future. So you can just consider this video to be my basic thoughts on the changes to the Nightfall system and whether or not it's going to be something worthwhile in the future. All right, so for those who don't know, in Update 1.1.3, the Nightfall system changed. Both the normal and prestige mode now have scoring rather than a time-based system, going in and killing enemies and stuff like that. Killing enemies in orb generations will accrue points, and then you can get high scores and whatnot that will qualify you for other rewards like special emblems and auras and stuff like that. It's kind of the same system we had towards the end of Destiny 1 when they revamped that Nightfall Strike system, gave us scoring, and then gave, those bounties and whatnot to Commander Zavala that you could trigger by getting high scores and whatnot. We've got like a version of that in Destiny 2 now. And overall, I like it. I think the Nightfall Strike scoring system is much better than what we had before in Destiny 2, which is basically kind of an arbitrary timer system. I was never really a big fan of adding a timer to the Nightfall and the Prestige Nightfall in Destiny 2. It felt like an artificial way to bump up the difficulty without really tuning anything about the strike. Now, rather than, having modifiers that are either super fun and make you powerful or kind of hinder you in some sorts of ways with very difficult enemies and environments, it's more so the clock that you're rushing against. You're trying to build up as much time as you can get and, work against that while you're going through some of the hardest content in the game. And that really didn't work on several levels. I could just give you one strike and everybody would instantly know exactly what I mean. Exodus Crash. A lot of the strikes and the encounters weren't really optimized for a timer sort of system. Anybody who's ever done the Nightfall when it's Exodus Crash will know that boss, his mechanics of disappearing basically anytime you deal like 5% of health to him for up to 30 to 40 seconds at a time. It doesn't really work so well when you're down to your last 5 minutes when you get to the boss, and all of that time is spent waiting for him to come back. And there are plenty of examples like that around the game. Mostly while the timer system, it wasn't completely terrible. It really wasn't great, and I didn't feel it was better than the scoring system we had before in Destiny 1. So I was very happy to see that come back, and I think it's been implemented pretty well. I do really like the fact that the global scoring system, beating certain high scores and whatnot, gets you special emblems that have variants, and then auras and whatnot are tied to those now. I think that's a really cool incentive to get people to come back and play high scores. Although right now, of course, we don't have any of the Nightfall specific loot that was supposed to be added to the game in 1.1.3. That got pushed back to 1.1.4, so some of you players out there who've already played a ton of Destiny 2 probably still don't have much of a reason to do Nightfalls right now. But overall, we're not talking about the rewards of the system, we're talking about the structure of Nightfalls themselves, and I think the scoring system has been implemented pretty darn well. But I do have a couple of issues with some things, and I guess I'll start off by talking about the normal Nightfall first, and then the Prestige Nightfall. So, when I logged into the game on Tuesday after the update went live, I immediately went into the Nightfall because I wanted to experience this new system, the scores, the modifiers, all that kind of stuff, and I was pretty surprised when I found out that modifiers are no longer on the normal Nightfall. That was a real head scratcher for me. And at first I thought it might have been like a glitch or something, like maybe the encounter was bugged or something and it just wasn't loading modifiers. But no, Bungie came out afterwards and basically clarified that yes, they removed modifiers from the normal Nightfall. You can see this in last week's issue of This Week at Bungie, where the dev team had this to say. Why were base Nightfall modifiers removed? The removal of base modifiers from Nightfall is because we want to emphasize core combat in this initial release and let the community define the meta for high-scoring Nightfall runs. We can certainly revisit the modifiers in the future. They're not dead and buried, and we're open to player feedback. Confirming that yes, they removed those modifiers on purpose, which was a real surprise to me because kind of like the shoulder charge change, I don't think anybody ever was asking for that. Certainly the modifiers in Destiny 2 are a little lackluster when you compare them to some of the things we have in Destiny 1, like small arms and any sort of burn or brawler or airborne or grounded or any of that kind of stuff. Or shoot, Daybreak, which is just the mayhem modifier patched onto the PvE mode. And I don't really think anybody, while the modifiers in D2 weren't that great, I don't think anybody was asking for the complete removal of them in the normal Nightfall. So if you haven't gone yet, if you go check out the normal Nightfall, it's basically just now an even harder heroic strike. And I do believe that to be a misstep. It's not really anything anybody was asking for. And the entire appeal of a Nightfall isn't just to go run a hard strike to emphasize, as they say, core combat. No, it's about going into those harder strikes, having something that makes you stronger as a Guardian, but also gives you some sort of weakness. Back in D1, when you went into like a Fallen or a Hive strike on an Arc Burn week, yeah, you could deal more damage with your Thunderlord or with your Fatebringer, but you were also taking more damage from a ton of different enemies. It was high risk, high reward. And the idea of modifiers kind of became synonymous with Nightfalls. And I believe that should still be the case here in Destiny 2. I did believe that some of the modifiers needed to be revamped. And certainly a lot of the modifiers in the Nightfall for Destiny 2 were tied around the timing mechanic. And so no doubt Bungie is scrambling to change that up and get some better modifiers now that we don't have a timer added in. But I think the removal of base Nightfall modifiers was indeed a mistake. Thankfully, as I just read to you, Bungie is open to player feedback on that. And if you agree with me, if you're somebody who thinks that, who's similarly confused and scratching their dome when they realize that modifiers have been removed from the base Nightfall, yes, this is the time to go and give that feedback to the community managers on Twitch, some of the devs on Twitch, in a respectful manner, but let them know, yeah, we would like modifiers back on the normal Nightfall. If I could have my way, I would say you could give people one base modifier on the normal Nightfall, and you can have that change out week by week. Some weeks it can be Torrent, some weeks you could implement something akin to Small Arms or a Singe. But I do believe removing those, well, it was probably a bit of a misstep there. It hasn't really affected too many people. You're still able to solo the Nightfall perfectly fine and whatnot. And when you do, you now get this challenge card drop that allows you to activate modifiers in the prestige version of the Nightfall. And that's where we'll be going next. But just overall, I think these changes to Nightfalls are mostly good. The removal of modifiers, not a good idea. And while it doesn't, destroy the game, if you're somebody who's already a little bit tired of playing Destiny 2 and you're curious and coming back to check out the changes, and you walked into the Nightfall and saw no modifiers and just said, oh, so these are like heroic strikes now, probably not going to give you too much incentive to continue running. I know me, certainly, I just turned right back around and went back to Monster Hunter World. But if you do manage to beat that Nightfall and get that challenge card drop, the Prestige Nightfall is something else entirely. I love what they've done with the Prestige version of the Nightfall. So now, like I said, when you've completed the Nightfall or a Prestige Nightfall, you get a challenge card that drops that allows you to select certain modifiers for the prestige mode. You can turn on an elemental singe so that the element of your choice deals more damage. So like a solar damage is increased, but you also take increased solar damage from other sources. So it's that classic burn from Destiny 1. During these prestige nightfalls, whenever you activate your challenge card, the extinguish modifier is now always on and applies to the Nightfall challenge card. It's basically that old Destiny Year 1 Nightfall modifier where if your full fire team gets wiped, boom, back to orbit you go, which adds a real element of risk to this game mode, especially when you tie it in with other stuff like the singe modifier. So you're dealing more damage, but you're taking more damage. And also, in one of the most interesting parts of this, there is a modifier that you can activate, which gives you a power handicap that lowers your character's power level in the Prestige Nightfall, but raises the score multiplier you get for killing enemies, allowing you to reach those global point thresholds a little bit faster, so you can weaken yourself to earn more points. I love this kind of thing. I love this entire system because it gives the Prestige Nightfall a level of challenge and control that it was really kind of missing. I've always argued that the Prestige Nightfall in particular is just not really rewarding and not worth running. You get the same rewards as a normal Nightfall. It's the same modifiers. There's really no change to the mode at all. There's nothing interesting about it, and there was no reason to run it before now. Certainly, we still don't have those special rewards from the Prestige mode, but at the very least now you can customize the experience to have an absolute ton of fun. I watched a lot of people go through solo on the Prestige version. You can get some pretty silly things active in there. You get an elemental modifier for like solar burn. You whip out your Prometheus lens, you put on a Devour build, and boom, everything's on fire and you're unkillable. It's really interesting, and I would say that it's probably the best part of 1.1.3 and the Nightfall changes in particular. And while it's good, I could certainly see some changes moving forward to make it even better. I would love it if there were additional modifiers that you could activate for some cost. Maybe you take a bit more damage. Maybe your level drops by 5 or something like that. I would love it if they had a small arms modifier that you could activate on these challenge cards, or certainly if they just added some sort of small arms modifier back into the Nightfall pool. Or something to make power weapons deal more damage, or something to make you move faster. There's really a lot of options here when it comes to challenge cards and being able to activate and customize your own modifiers. Overall, I just think this is a fantastic system. And again, when they finally add some of those new specific rewards to Nightfalls and Prestige Nightfalls, the Prestige is absolutely going to be the place to be when it comes to getting into some of that high-end PvE content. Overall, fantastic job with the change to the Prestige Nightfalls. It ultimately brings back a level of the power fantasy that's really kind of missing from the PvE experience in Destiny 2 right now. And it's a good sign that Bungie is looking to give players, especially players on the more hardcore enthusiast end of the swimming pool here, more engaging content to play in, more engaging content to interact with, something to chase, and a fun environment for you to chase it in, which is definitely something that Destiny 2 has been missing really for the past 6 to 7 months that it's been out, and I'm very happy to see them move in this direction. Alright, so ultimately, those are my thoughts. I think the normal Nightfall changes could probably be rolled back a little bit. We could get the modifiers back in that, and then that system's probably going to be okay. Of course, we can add some new modifiers to it, or, just bring back some of the modifiers from D1. If it ain't broke, don't need to fix it. Bring back small arms, bring back airborne, grounded, all that kind of stuff. There was nothing wrong with those modifiers, and I don't know why they weren't brought back in the base game of Destiny 2, but at the very least, we seem to be moving forward on that. So, if Bungie were to hear my feedback, the number one thing from this video is please bring back modifiers for the base Nightfall. I don't think there's any reason for those not to be there. But when it comes to the Prestige Nightfall, absolutely fantastic job. It's a ton of fun to play. It's even a ton of fun to watch, especially when you're watching a group that gets bopped towards the boss and sent back to orbit. The salt is just palpable. So great system all around with that. Can't wait till we have some really great rewards going along with it. And I would love to see that challenge card system expand. Shoot, you could even bring that sort of system to something like the raid later on. Could you imagine being able to select your own modifiers inside of a raid? People in Destiny have been asking for that since year one, and it's certainly now a possibility on the horizon. But anyways, Guardians, those are my thoughts. Be sure to leave me yours. Have you guys played the new Nightfall system in Destiny 2? What do you think of it? Do you agree that modifiers should probably come back to the normal Nightfall, or should they stay gone? Do you enjoy, I guess, the extra challenge of it? And of course, how do you feel about the Prestige Nightfall system? Whatever your thoughts, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all of the latest Destiny 2 news. Iron Banner's coming back tomorrow, so I might just be hopping on that to earn some new rewards. But alright, Guardians, I'm out for now. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.